casting directors are that part of the film crew working hard to get the perfect match between an actor and a film character. If you got stunned watching Ian McKellen, for example, play Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, or Angelina Jolie play Lara Croft, chances are there was someone in the look for these talents. In this video, we went all the way to Cork to meet one of the most successful casting directors in Ireland, accounting for discovering talents such as Saoirse Ronan, Colin Farrell and Kate Winslet. Her portfolio also includes films like The Da Vinci Code, The Lord of the Rings, The Commitments, Father Ted, and most recently, Little Women. Welcome to Irish Film Bites, the Irish casting director, Ros Hubbard. Thank you for having me and for this talk.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah,
it's lovely.
Please. Yeah. And tell me about yourself. So to begin with, to get the audience a sip of your curriculum and how you began with. You were formerly a model agent.
I was a model agent in London. I worked in advertising in New York. I took a break from being in an agency, going to New York. I worked in an agency, an advertising agency called J. Walter Thompson. I learned a lot of confidence and a few tricks there about it's okay, it'll be okay, you'll be all right, keep going. And then back to I missed Ireland terribly. I think it's a great place to live. Back to Ireland, ran a model agency, began to notice that actors weren't represented very well in Ireland, but I was very raw at that stage. So we just started to represent a few, but not much. Then John is English, my husband's English, so he had been in advertising in Ireland for about 5 or 6 years, and he did a very successful commercial here about butter. When butter was losing out to margarine, he did a great one with Cyril Cusack doing the voiceover, and he then after that said, I've got to go back to London, I've got to keep going in advertising. So back he went and I joined him. And when I got there, I realized that I kind of knew a lot about casting, because in the States I worked in that department, and I knew how, I began to realize what an interesting area it was. And I started, like, people would come into Ireland, and mainly on big commercials with big directors, and they would say, look, here's a huge amount of money, find us top actor. We would use England and Ireland then. But actually starting to cast properly was in London. Yeah.
How is the process of dealing with directors, producers? When does a casting director comes in, and when do they have a say? Do you have a say?
How it happens is you get a call from a producer usually who says, we have a lovely script, we'd like you to have a look at it, and this is where I am now. We'd like you to have a look at it, would you consider doing it? And the script is very important to me. At my stage, I like to do less work, but I like to enjoy it. So if the script is something I can face and I like, and then secondly, if the director is somebody that I've worked with before and I get on really well with, it's a given. But you start with that, you get the script, you read the script 2 to 3 times, you then break it down, which means you take each character and you give a description and their age and what they have to do. A big omission when you're looking at a script is you don't notice that they have to drive.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
So many
well, the
characters,
funny thing was we went to the premiere and I didn't know who was who, because they all had masks, and particularly the Hobbit, you know. We did that. How we got the Lord of the Rings is because we helped Peter when he was nobody. He was a young director with an anorak. He used to creep into the office, hello John, hello Ros, go script, and it would be some very strange piece of work, usually a horror film. And very strange casting. I wish I could remember some titles. I need my own credits in front. But we would do them. People say, what do you do? It's very strange. Yeah, it is strange, but he's really nice. And eventually he had the one we cast Kate Winslet in. Yeah. And he had that to do, and he came in with it and went, my God, this is a change. It's a factual story.
Back
it really
when
happened.
She was 15.
Yeah, she was 15, yeah. And John did that casting session with her. She came in, she started to read. He said, fine, that's great, thank you. And she went, what? What did I do wrong? And she said, no, you'll be meeting Peter, that's fine. Go. And
Amazing.
of course she flew it.
Juliet is joining us from St. Margaret. And prior to that, you spent some time at Queenswood in the Hawke's Bay.
I am actually from England, Miss Stewart.
Of course. Juliet's father is Dr. Hume, rector of Canterbury College.
She was 15 with the sense of a 28-year-old, you know, not in a precocious way. She was just like somebody's very elegant elder sister.
And there was something there that you just sparkled.
That happens. I think we're here on behalf of the audience most of the time. You get the essence of the actor. And when you feel, particularly when they're reading the part, you sometimes get this sort of sizzle on the back of your neck and you go, wow.
And tell me one thing. So you talked a little bit about casting, dealing with directors.
Mm-hmm.
So in your curriculum, you have dealt with people that nowadays, you know, are just our idols.
Mm.
Paul Greengrass,
Yeah.
Peter Jackson, Alan Parker. How is it dealing with these directors?
Well, dealing with them when you've dealt with other directors as you've gone up is an incredible privilege, because most of what they say is genius level. Mm-hmm. Parker doesn't talk at all unless he has something to say. He's very funny, he's very articulate, he's very cross, and you can go home crying at times, even at my age, or you can just go home laughing about a story he's told you that happened to him when he was 19. But he is a perfectionist, and that is great, because you shouldn't do anything that isn't aiming at perfect.
So tell me a bit more, in your career, which film do you think it was the most challenging one?
Oh gosh, that's quite hard. Quite a lot of them are, most of them are challenging, to be honest. That's why they pay us so much money. But yeah, most of them are challenging because of this new problem of the name. You must have a name, and that name must be right, have the ability to act, do the publicity afterwards. So they're all challenging. The most challenging, gosh, I'm stuck. Well, I did a very small film in Northern Ireland, and it was about the 70s and the Troubles. And I remember we started looking for Bono, who considered very seriously doing the part. And he said, "You're just having me as the token prod, I know." And I said, "No, it's not that at all. You'd be fantastic." Can't think of the name of the film. It didn't make a huge success. James Frayne did it in the end, and it was one of my favorite films because of a true look at the situation in the 70s. It might have been too accurate, almost in the documentary area, you know.
We're all on the same side here, sir.
Christ, son. You've no idea how nervous that makes me.
But I honestly can't give you one. I don't think so. A lot of films you can't wait to end because you're tired and you've tried, you've been through the whole process.
Challenge doesn't mean, the challenge is not attached to the fact that of the size of the movie or the production.
No, not at all. Sometimes you'll have a film that's 80 million, 150. Look at the budgets on Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The only challenge was keeping going for like 9 months on a lot of casting. And Peter is the kind of director, Peter Jackson, and his wonderful wife, Fran, share with you exactly the way they're thinking at that moment. You get the brief, you understand his process, her process. She has a lot to say. And you have a laugh because you'd say, "I want a spider there." And she'd say, "Do you want a hairy spider or a bony spider?" And you're sitting there casting thinking, how's this affecting me? And somehow it is affecting you because you're getting the mood of the film. You're privileged to be there listening to them.
Oi! We're coming too! We'll have to send us all tied up in a sack to stop us.
Anyway, you need people of intelligence on this sort of mission, quest, thing.
Well, that rules you out, Pip.
9 companions.
So be it. You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring.
Right. Where are we going?
And you work work on the production itself as well?
No. Years ago you did. When I was young in Ireland, you did a bit of casting, and then you went down, you did a bit of AD, and then you might have driven everybody. You might have had to write the call sheet the next morning, like a proper everything. They'd no money, and you'd no money, so you were glad to be there. Yeah.
And the most rewarding. I asked you about the challenging, but the rewarding.
Rewarding.
Not in terms of prizes, but personally.
Yes. Well, I've got this soft spot for the commitments because I am from Dublin, and I'm a kind of poshish Dublin, so a lot of people didn't think I'd know how to do it because I came from Ballsbridge, you know what I mean? Yeah. I was born in Renata Lima, grew up in Ballsbridge.
And the film is the opposite, about North Dublin.
Absolutely, real howies, you know, but Dublin's very small, actually, and you also grew up in an atmosphere of don't think you're it, you know, so you mixed very well. And the challenge there, funnily enough, was to be sure I was accurate. Alan Parker was on it so fast, and he was able to tell me things I didn't know about Dublin. I didn't know horses went up in lifts and flats. I didn't know that.
Me either.
Hey,
What?
you're not taking that into the lift.
We have to. The stairs will kill him.
Parker told us all about that. But the fact is, like all casting, you're casting a family. When you're casting the commitments, family with Colin Meaney as the dad, funny as hell. He'd worked with Parker before. And he's absolutely brilliant. And he also is very realistic. He'll look at a script. Even if you're not the most moneyed in town, Colin Meaney will always read a script. And he'll say no or yes, but he will read it.
Take a look.
Yeah. I suppose it's the most rewarding because I'm a Dubliner, and because if I was going to a desert island and you said you've one film to take, that's the one I'd take. Yeah. And it was my first film.
Wow. but was that supposed to be non-actors from since the beginning, or?
No, that happened while we were out. It was very, very organic, that film, yeah. We looked at all the actors first. We were given 3 months before Mr. Parker arrived. That was when they had money in films. It wasn't that we were paid that much, but we could afford to be there and looking. And I looked, as there are actors in the film, but in the actual band, the majority weren't. And that was because we went around. It was a great time for music in Dublin at the time, and we used to go to these.
And that was in the 90s.
Yeah, late '89.
Early 90s.
And we would see these bands playing at night. John and I, we weren't that young even then, by the way, and we'd be shooting with a video camera, and they'd be saying, "Who's your one?" And I don't know, she your ma, you know, and. And afterwards we'd go up to them and say, would you mind coming in tomorrow if possible and do a workshop with us? We're doing a little film. We tried not to frighten them too much, but they'd all read the commitments. It's about this size, the book.
Lads, you're looking at the commitment.
Brilliant management, Brother Rabbit.
Let's keep relations on a professional basis. How are we professional if we've never been paid?
I tell you one thing, there's also a great movie from Brazil.
Yeah.
And it's called City of God.
Yes.
Which is very well known. And guess what? It's not based on, they casted non-actors as well. And it was such a big success in Brazil.
If you have a director who can work with non-actors, that's the answer. I mean, Parker's main direction is don't act. He wants it natural. So he'd even say that to very well-established actors. Stop acting, because life isn't acting.
Not so rehearsed all the time. Yeah.
And if you look at what particularly young audiences like, they like it very natural. I have one director, actually I don't have him anymore because I've gone away from London and he's in LA most of the time, Gary. He's an Irish director and he's extremely good. But when I used to come back, the tapes would go into Gary and he would say, I believe or I don't believe. And that was the main comment he made. And of course, by the time we get towards the end, I'm hating him, you know. That's what happens in his creative process. You love him later. But I go, I believe, I don't believe. I mean, Does he believe it? Anyway, this would go on all the time. And it was enough of a direction. And a lot of people call that method acting. It's not. It's truth acting. It's going into the character and really, really being that person and just thinking about what you're going to say and then saying it like you do when you're talking to somebody. You know?
Absolutely. Tell me one thing. Which would be the actor that you know, it's a mark in your career that you have discovered?
Oh, there's a few though. There's Kate Winslet, Orlando Bloom, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, a lot of Irish ones here because you get the time to find them. Countless.
Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell, yeah. He, as he says himself, I threw myself into Hubbard's and they found me an agent. And those were the days you could find an agent. Now the agents are so swamped. And I still meet very good young actors, and I think I'll send you a letter, I'll send about you to maybe 5 or 6 agents. I didn't have to do that. It would be one agent before, but they're so busy. And there's so many actors in the world. But there's quite a few of people of that level, yeah. And, but what's sad now is I do the kind of films where they want the stars. So you don't get to go down the streets of Dublin. But that might be what I might insist on now that I'm older and I don't need to earn as much money to run an office in London or pay big staff. I can swan around small places and find beginning actors or real people with the talent. But real people are incredibly good. In Ireland, when there weren't as many actors, we used to find amateur drama people. And of course they'd be doing this sort of acting all the time. But you get them off the stage and you talk to them and you realise they're great characters. And like Waking Ned Devine was a film we did. A lot of them are amateur. Paul Greengrass uses a lot of real people, like in United 90, whatever it was, United 90. Yeah. A lot of people in the air towers and around pilots, they were real, because that's what he wants to work with, that authenticity. Because he's a documentary maker originally.
Organic,
yeah, it's organic, yeah. And I find too that's increasing with younger directors are prepared to go, okay, I don't have to have Cillian if I can't get Cillian, which mainly they can't get Cillian. Let's have a look at some new people, or I might just say, look, there's a guy who's a singer and I feel he's got a huge count on the YouTube and everything. Let's have a look at him.
So is that the way you look also, not only through theatre or auditions?
Yes, unfortunately it is.
Digital platforms.
Unfortunately, yes, because all it's done is made my work increase. Before, without all that, you had some time off. Now, if I'm looking for young teenagers, I put it out on the net. And I certainly found Barry Keoghan that way, you know, before he got going. And he's wonderful. And he's still like he's real, like what's happened? How am I in this room with these people? But yeah, it's just increased the work for the caster. And self-tapes is a huge thing now. You don't have the money. The production doesn't spend the money sending you in to find people and shoot everybody, film everybody. So they send in self-tapes. So that's put an onus on the actor to learn how to present themselves. And on us, I'll be looking at 300% more actors than I would have looked at before, but we might find the one.
And actually, as you said, just make it impressing on the 40 seconds,
yeah.
The first 40
yes,
seconds.
Yeah. Well, you'll probably hear out the whole first read. If it's completely wrong, you're going to have to stop the tape. You've made a mistake, it was the wrong guy, yeah. And you don't have to say it to them, you move on. But I tell actors this very honestly, because sometimes they send in 10 self-tapes. You're not going to go through 10, it might be number 8 that's good. Yeah. They have to get that worked out, and it's an independent opinion they need to look at.
They have to curate their own work.
Yes, absolutely, because that's their chance, is they're being looked at now, that you might have known about them before, but they must get the right one in, and don't waste your time. You know? I mean, honestly, massive amounts still arrive in, more than ever.
Yeah, descending rapidly.
No, there he is, right there, over the Verrazano Bridge.
Oh, yeah. Look how fast he's going.
No, he's going right up the Hudson River Center. Oh, my God.
Did you see that? Did you see that, sir?
So tell me, what makes you reject any script?
Ultra-violence. I find it very, very hard to... For instance, at the moment, the handmaid thing at the moment, it's not so much ultra-violent as they're putting people in a position that we've got out of long ago. And I know... Handmaid's Tale, yeah. It's, of course it's well written, but it was written years ago, you know. And she's now having a huge success with it, and people love it. But I would not have done that if it came my way, because it's putting a woman into a position that, people will, I mean, almost with the equality and the rights we have gained now, we're even more unpopular with certain elements of the misogyny, you know, whilst there are great guys out there.
Questions our society.
It does, yeah. What, that they like it?
No,
no,
the way
well, we're not there yet. We're in transition, you know, and the story, yes, sorry, I think it absolutely and does not support our society as it is. You can't make up dreams, but that is not happening here in our society. It may be happening in other places. Take it there and tell the truth. But I know that it's a well-made piece of work, therefore I'm not criticizing that, but I just find the whole concept of women in that position and the way that people are loving it is suspect to me. It's suspect. And a lot of women love it.
Yeah.
You know?
I haven't watched it personally. But
I watched it at the beginning, and you have to make up your own mind. And yeah, but you know, I didn't watch. Peaky Blinders is an amazing show. It's extremely violent. I stopped watching it, and then just recently, John and I went right back to episode 1, and we're on at the end of the second series now, because it's almost like Tarantino. You almost don't take the violence seriously because it's so extreme, you know.
You know, it's interesting as you're saying about ultraviolence and how you would reject
I would reject it.
But recently, you know, these main series are all based on violence.
This is my problem. This is and I watched every frame of Breaking Bad because it was wonderful. And I love Cranston, and always have. John Hubbard was the first person to, about 30 years ago he mentioned him to me. But the thing is, our problem now is that the choice is limited, and you could look at 8 scripts and 6 to 7 of them will have violence. Therefore, I have to adjust my thinking or get out of the business altogether. I'm out of it a lot. I don't do anything like the amount I used to do. I do what I want to do now, starting with Riverdance. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But and there's no violence in Riverdance. Well, unless your ankles feel it. But you have to actually adjust your thinking now or leave the business, because the audience themselves are so used to violence, they almost need it. They almost feel, oh, that's really dry. You know, that's not good enough, because they're not belting the hell out of each other, or they're not killing people extremely. So it's very difficult. I'm glad I'm as old as I am. If I was 22 now and I was facing a lifetime of it getting more violent as we go along, I think I'd have to be a nun. I don't think they'd have me either.
I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
How do you see the Irish industry nowadays, if you could?
It's extremely successful from my point of view. I was working in Ireland when Michael O'Higgins, the president, brought in the tax things that made people come here and shoot, and that gave Ireland a huge boost. And I'm very proud of that, because a lot of other countries have emulated it. But I think it's in great condition. Our problem now is trying to get Irish talent back in here to work. Never mind American. We're trying to get the Irish to work here because they're so popular all over the world. Even in the old days.
Instead of just aiming for Hollywood.
Yeah, and maybe make it an agreement you'll do 1 film every 3 years or something in Ireland, because the films, as you know, take 2 years. When filming started in Hollywood, everybody was mainly Jewish or Irish. The Irish did a lot of humping, electrical, writing, very talented writers, singing, dancing, and the Jews were the other side of it, and we worked brilliantly together. We still do, actually.
And you as a woman, because it's such a male environment, would you feel underestimated or pressured because you're a woman in this industry?
In casting, it's easy to be a woman, because for some reason you're a bit of a mum as well. You're kind of their mum. Like, I've come in and hoovered an office for Thaddeus O'Sullivan because the office wasn't hoovered. So while I'm waiting for the director to arrive, I get the hoover out and do it. I sprayed the desk and he comes and says, "What are you doing?" "I'm just getting it ready for you." They love it. They love it. Mum is here, have a cup of tea, all is well. And now we'll work.
Just looking at us.
Yeah. I am tough. I take no prisoners. So if there's a really strange direction going, I will give my opinion. But that's all I'm paid for. I don't have to fight or lose the rag over them not making a decision. Because in the end, it is the director's choice. A lot of producers have a lot of power, particularly in television. So again, you have to adjust it to a wider base of responsibility and accept the majority. I take my cue from the director. If the director is settling and listening and wanting what somebody else wants, fine. If not, I'll see that it really, really matters to them. So I will do anything I can within the boundaries of our structure. It's a very, very disciplined structure in film. You have a pecking order you work off, you know, it's very useful when you're working.
And you have to respect when the producer comes in, where the director have a say, has a say.
And the new thing in our business, as far as casting, I would say probably the biggest problem is that, you know what a sales agent is. They're the people who take the film, buy it, sell it all over their territories. It could be Japan, Australia, US. They have a list of actors in their head that they really want in every film they do. Now, whether they're right or wrong in the part, they kind of want Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson won't mind me using him as an example because he gets a huge amount offered, particularly in Irish films. And Liam, might not be available. Michael Fassbender won't be available for 2 years. This sort of thing happens. So we have to adjust your thinking. And the sales agent seems to be stuck in, if we don't have Meryl Streep, we're not going to be able to do this film. Well, sometimes we can't have Meryl Streep. Sometimes they have a film full of stars. It's a turkey. It doesn't work. Sometimes they have absolutely brand new nobodies. It becomes a triumph overnight.
How many stories of new actors replacing someone else and the film becomes brilliant?
Yeah, if it happens during the filming, they often replace with an unknown and it's brilliant.
Yes,
like if somebody gets an accident or, you know.
They can jail us. They can shoot us. They can even conscript us. They can use us as cannon fodder in the Somme. But we have a weapon more powerful than any in the whole arsenal of their British Empire. And that weapon is our refusal.
And so you have been doing this for a few decades.
Oh, yes.
40 years? Or?
I am 40 years easily, 40 years,
How did it begin to be a family business this way? Or?
I think it started with John saying, he was in advertising, he was making a lot of money. There were 2 BMWs outside the door with the roof off the house, getting it made bigger in London. And he broke his kneecap playing football. Kneecaps, we're big on kneecaps, the Hubbards. I just broke mine. He broke his kneecap badly and they had him in hospital and he had to come home and not go to work. And while he was at home, I kept throwing him Spotlight, you know, the book we used to use. Now it's on the net. Throwing the books, give us 10 ideas for a woman as 60 and da-da-da. And he used to do great ideas. And he was at home for about a month nearly. It was that bad, the injury. And he said, I don't want to go back to advertising. What do you think? Would we survive if we go together? I thought that was the best fun. We'd have great crack, we'd go to lunch together. And it did, it really worked. The first thing we did, apart from all the commercials in London, was Max Headroom. Did you ever see that show?
No.
It's a guy who's a computer. He has a big accident where he drives through, you know, one of those barriers in a car park that go up and down. And on this it says Max Headroom, 14 feet. And that's the last words he saw written. So he wakes up going Max Headroom, so they think that's his name. So then he becomes a computerized thing. When we did it, none of us understood computers. We did not know, but it was great fun. Matt Frewer did it. He was great.
This is Max Headroom. And what you're about to witness is one of the most sinister-sounding intros to a trailer to one of the greatest epics ever produced in the history of television. And there's more, because you are going to see it as well.
Yes, it.
Yes, it. Yes, namely, the Max Headroom story.
And how is it to work with your husband for so many years?
Well, I don't know
Who has
anything
the final
better
say?
now.
Who has the final say?
Oh, it depends on how seriously we feel about the final say. Usually is with the director, so that's okay on the choice. But it depends on how motivated we are. I think it's a fairly honest relationship. We laugh a lot.
Do you disagree a lot?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people see us saying, like he'll say, "What about so and so?" I say, I'm looking at the director. I don't know though. Don't know if that's right, you know. And really, I should be saying, "Yeah, it's a great idea," but that's not the truth, you know. And very often, John is right. Probably righter than me. He's much more considered. I'm on my feet, talking fast, and I'm instinctive about casting, and I'm lazier than John. John is a thinker. Even the way he answered yesterday, and I answer, I'm always making the joke. Yeah. John will take, well, you talk about respecting an actor and caring about, I feel all that, but I don't say it. So between us, we're quite different, and that sort of does that.
But you can balance yourself.
That's
because, for example, I see that you're very charismatic, so you can make the actor become confident and comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's our reputation. That helped in London. People would say, "Oh, it's lovely going up to the Hubbards. They give you a cup of tea. They're nice to you. They tell you where the loo is," and we're parenting them, because it is the hardest thing to do is walk in and do an audition, because you're bringing everything you have on your back and handing it over to a sea of 5 people, some of whom are on the phone, some of whom are eating a sandwich, you know, and it's very, very hard, you know.
And if you had to give an advice to new actors coming in,
don't do it.
Don't come in.
Don't do it. It's too hard.
Look for something else.
Yeah, get a proper job, like your parents say. I think if it's the only thing that you could bear to do, those are the only terms. That if you can't face doing anything else, do acting. And then be prepared for all the knocks in the world, but be open. Don't think you've got the answer, because the whole point of acting is learning all the time, getting little characteristics off people, keeping your mind open. Work like Billy, or watch as many films as you can, and be on time.
Perfect. Thank you so much
for
talking to me, to the tenor. You're a lovely person.
It's a pleasure.
You.